Have you ever been frustrated with your physical performance, your ability to move well without pain and do the things that you love in life? Or have you ever been frustrated because you don't even understand why you have pain, or you're not recovering even though you're doing physical therapy and you're doing your exercises and you're watching your diet and things like that? Well, then I have some good news for you today. My name's John Thompson, and we're at Catch20Too, the YouTube channel. And we're in a series called Understanding Your Pain. And I want to go through a concept today that follows a saying, a Bible quote that says, "Be ready always to give reason for the hope that lies before you." And how I've applied that to my life in the situations of recovering from injury. I've had 9 shoulder dislocations. I've had at least a dozen ankle sprains. I love to play basketball. I'm going to be 51 years old in a few weeks. And when I was in the lowest point of 9 shoulder dislocations in about a 6-year period, I didn't know why it was happening. And, in that state, I felt very, almost like cursed, almost like, what did I do wrong? Am I being punished for something? And what I found out is there was just some things that I didn't know. And one of the reasons that we have hope is because there's so many things to know, and there's no way we're expected to know them all, which is why we have a lifetime to go explore. But one of the good things that happens is that when you get a new nugget of truth and something to apply, we literally get excited in our brain and we start to tap more capacity in our endeavors. So when we learn a new concept and we go to explore and apply that, then we know that there's a chance of a new outcome, a new harvest, some new fruit. And when we get used to applying that method and saying, what else can I learn? Then we can start going through the systems of the body and finding out where the lowest hanging fruit is and how to pick that. And when I look at the marketplace, I look at all the things that I've seen out in the world and all the options that I've had. I fell in love with muscle phasing 19 years ago because I learned more about the role that posture played in my movement and my injuries. I learned how the brain connects to the muscular tissue, how movement happens, what does the brain need to see in order to utilize muscle tissue. And the way that I explain it to people as simply as I can is I call it an apology that the body accepts. And one of the bigger parts of why it accepts it is because we listen first. It's like your body has something to say. There's reasons why tissue went dormant or isn't working fully. And one of the reasons that we don't understand why we hurt sometimes is because if we look at something called function, our body's ability to do work, and here we're going to talk about movement and muscles, we can have a 30% drop in function before we notice anything, before we have signs. 30%. So we can get down to 69% functionality, and now we're like, why does this hurt? Why do I have pain? This came out of nowhere. I don't remember falling. Nothing landed on me. I didn't have a spill. No one, I wasn't in an accident. But now my leg hurts. Now my knee hurts. Now my back hurts. Now my neck hurts. Now my shoulder hurts. Now my elbow hurts. Whatever it is. And it's like, if it doesn't happen, boom, where we lose, 30+% function in an instant, when this happens slowly over time, science says that you have to have a 10% movement one way or the other in order to notice. So we can improve by 5%, 8%, 9%, and you're like, I don't think it's any different. So when you start, noticing and looking for more subtle clues, so when you've done something, like when I go do a MAP, muscular activation profile with somebody, I'm going to have them do some very, very generic things. You're going to, lay down on a table, you're laying on your back, you're out of gravity for the most part. I'm going to grab the ankles, you're going to push out with both legs. You're going to push out, and I'm going to feel what happens from the foot all the way up, to your hips, to your rib cage, and see, is there a steady, flow of tension that connects right away and is integrated all the way up. In most cases, there's going to be some kind of anomaly between pushing out, pulling in, pushing down, lifting up, and we're going to find some clues. And these, functional anomalies, these dormant situations, they can show up over time and add, you might lose 1% function at a time from something. Maybe misstepped, or, we were in a weird position, or even the fact that, something happened to us emotionally. We got in trouble at work, or we had, something happen in our family that was distressful, or we got yelled at for something we didn't do. All these things, can be a hindrance for communication through the body. And now we have less function, and it gets to a point where now it's here in this danger zone. And now, we're aware of a process that might have started months or years ago. And until we can get to what is this cause, what happened so that it didn't start showing up at its best, and we can use muscle testing, the body knows. When we have our mind, we have our conscious mind. So, I'm in a room right now and there's things that I see. There's so many bits of data in this room. There's billions of bits of data, of sights and sounds and smells and feels, and, and my conscious mind only picks up a small percentage based on my needs, because to take all of that information and try to store it would be overwhelming. But my energy field has way more information in it than my conscious mind has. So what happened, when it happened, what it wants to resolve it, all that information is in our energy field, and we can use the nervous system through the muscles and movement to see what is functioning and what it might need to get more functional. And then when you start living life where you're used to this, we're used to this downward spiral. We're used to saying, well, something happened today that I didn't fully recover from. So if you're in a position where you're trying to be active, and when you go to play your sport or do your activity and it's painful, so you stop, and then you take a rest period and say, well, maybe I need to rest. Well, if rest isn't getting us recovery, then rest isn't the apology that the body's willing to accept. It might need some kind of resource or some look from the outside. But the good news is that even if we go in at 1 or 2% at a time and start asking, what do you need to function better? Then we start to see movement in the right direction. We might have movement in the right direction where we've got 8% more functionality in one session for something that took, years or a decade to drop, 30%. We can get 8%. Now, you might not be able to notice right away all that improvement, but most people can. And even if we get 1% and start going this direction, This is what we start having people talk about, what is a miracle? What is a celebratory situation? My definition of what is a miracle is when you're only used to this decline and it's steady and it's predictable and you've only seen things go down. The moment it goes up 1% or 0.5%, it doesn't matter. Now you know that this exists. And the law of polarity says, people say, well, can this get any better? Is there a way to improve this? And I say, well, do you think there's things that you could do to make it worse? And most people are like, yeah, I think there's things that I could do to make it worse. I could drop a weight on my foot and make it worse. I could, there's lots of things that we can do to make it worse. Well, if there's the ability to make it worse, there's the ability to make it better automatically. So when we have hope, it's basically usually because we learned something new. And learning things that are new are exciting. And I know this is green and it probably doesn't show up that great on the camera. But when you learn something new, you get excited. And we start putting more of our capacity in, and we have faith to believe. We get a better attitude about it. And this was, very much when I learned about muscle phasing, and I had my first map done, and I learned that my shoulder posture was way off. I had 9 dislocations of the shoulder. My head posture was forward, like this. My shoulders were rolled in front of me, so when I stood and I walked, my arms basically went like this. And, all the sagging ligaments that were weak in this. So this was my starting posture at age 31 because I didn't know. And all the activity that I did once I discovered that this was off made sense. So when I started correcting it, when I started finding something new that I could do to make a difference, it was like in 30 days, my shoulders got to come back. My arms were by my side. My arms weren't even touching when I was walking. And I was very excited about this. Why? Because I had hope from something new, and I already proved that it was positive. I could feel better right away. And, now I didn't have wishful thinking. I had a plan of action that I could go through. And in the time that I was dislocating, I had gone to see lots of therapists. I had tried lots of modalities and stuff, and I got help in a lot of places. But most of the time when I go into the marketplace and see if this is something you've ever experienced, is if I spent $100 on something and I got maybe $50 to $80 worth of return. So if you spend $100 and you get a $50 return, I am not going to go back to that place. Even if I get an $80 return, I'm going to still look for something where I at least get $100 for my $100. So when I found muscle phasing, and my teacher, Rick, even though I drove a long distance to get there, it's like when I got this new perspective, I felt like I got $1,000 return for my $100. And I said to myself, I am going to go every week for 6 months if that's what it takes, because I'm done dislocating the shoulder. I don't want to do that anymore. So it was exciting for me. Hopefully this would be as exciting for you. I don't know what your story is. I don't know where you're trying to get from and where you're trying to get to. But if you're curious about what muscle phasing could do for you, look at the link below. Contact me, John Thompson, and we could go through a quick map, a muscle activation profile for you to see where your weak links are and what your body responds well to. And hopefully we can be part of lots of celebrations where we look at this arrow going this way, and then you can have reason for the hope that lies before you as well. So thank you, and onward and upward.